Hello, I'm Dan.
And I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Dan, we are talking about Red Hills Wind Farm.
Red Hills Wind Farm.
It's pretty much what I imagine you think it is. It's a farm of wind.
Where they make wind.
Well, famously, our friend Katie at Exeter did say this once. She thought that wind farms were how they made wind. She came up with some absolute bangers, as did Pixel Girl. It's got to be said. Like, they're very intelligent people. Katie is a paralegal now? I can't remember what she's actually doing. She's in law.
I think she's just actually starting her training contract.
Right. So she was
a paralegal, yeah.
Lawyer to be.
Yeah.
And Pixel Girl is a polyglot and teacher. But they are they did say some things like, I don't know if you can remember any other classic ones. There's one other Pixel Girl one which I can share. Not
off the top of my head.
The Pixel Girl one was before we were dating. And we went to the Imperial in Exeter, which is a very fine pub. And basically, she said she had a science question, but she wasn't sure if it was too dumb to ask. So so our friend Peter was like, "Okay, well, ask me, and I'll relay it and see what it is." And basically, she whispered something in his ear, and he immediately went, "No, that's very stupid."
Yeah, that's it.
Which the question was, "Have we ever landed humans on Pluto?" Which.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know very much about space, I guess is a perfectly reasonable question. But it was just the way that he just heard it and immediately was like, no, that's very stupid.
A very sort of immediate answer from the intermediary, Peter.
Yeah, the emissary,
yeah.
Peter Robinson.
So, Red Hill, did you say?
I was going to say, before we talk about the article, we should probably address a couple of things.
Ooh, yes.
Which is that this is the first time we've recorded in a while. The last episode came out not that long ago, but was very delayed because we actually, in that episode, which came out in early to mid-January, we're talking about how exciting it is that the Jingle Jam has just started.
Yeah.
And that was delayed basically because I, unfortunately, got quite sick.
Again.
For the second and third times.
You've had some rotten luck.
I really did. I got what I'm pretty sure, we don't have any confirmation of this, but I'm pretty sure was Delta, the Delta variant of COVID, which was in mid-December. So just after I did my Jingle Jam streams. I think I actually got it from someone in the Oxcast. And then that was, okay, fine, it'll be done before Christmas. We can go and have Christmas at Pixel Girls family. Mm-hmm. And then right at the end of my time with Delta, I had a wisdom tooth come through, which was, not the best. I was like, fine, okay, but we can go in and have Christmas. And then we went to Pixel Girls families for Christmas, and I got Omicron from her sister. So
amazing.
I then was out for about another 10 days. And so I just, got absolutely naffle work done for like at least 4 weeks. So apologies that was delayed, but it was for a reasonable reason.
And how are you feeling now?
I'm not 100% just yet. I feel like I'm about 98, 99% of the way there.
Right.
I was normally in my schedule, I'd actually go swimming this morning, but I know that this is a very defeatist attitude normally, but I had this attitude of, if I go, I'm not convinced that I could actually do it. And something that I do with exercise quite frequently is I go from nothing to, I should really get back into exercise, and I overdo it way too quickly, and I just burn out. So I'm just being kind of cautious this time round. So I feel like I'm about there. My internal battery, I think, is almost completely recharged. So
good. Oh, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yes, and I'm glad that I'm able to record with you again. And actually, because I was well enough to travel, I was able to see you just last week.
Indeed, which was a lovely surprise.
We came down to Exeter to have a chat about the wedding. Which, just saying that feels a bit weird.
Which is mad, isn't it?
But having a meeting with our friend Michael and our vicar, Hannah, who's going to be running the service for us, and just sort of about, what's going to go in the service, what order we'd like it to be in, the music, some of the logistics in terms of the introit, for processional. That's the one when Pixel Girl walks in. It was all just very exciting. And then we were able to meet up at another pub. Funny that it's a common thread of our social group, isn't it?
Yeah.
Meeting up at yet another pub in Exeter, and got to see you. How was your Christmas?
My Christmas was both sort of simultaneously very different and felt very strange, but completely lovely, in that for the past certainly 4, maybe 5 years, I normally can't get home to see my family until at least the evening of evening of St. Stephen's Day, Boxing Day, maybe the 27th, because I'm usually singing right the way through, having been involved with the cathedral, because Christmas for the church, understandably, is quite an important time of year. So there's lots going on.
Yeah, I've heard this.
And there was a possibility that I might be doing the same thing this year, but just at Buckfast Abbey, not at the cathedral. But as it turned out, there wasn't really as much for me to be doing, and the sort of proposed schedule meant that I sort of might not really be doing anything for, I don't know, a week or so, and then a random service. So I ended up going home early. I drove home, driving home for Christmas. I drove home on I think the 11th of December, which was ludicrously early and not something I'm sort of really used to. Partly just because I had nothing to do in Exeter, and then there was meant to be a concert to launch this Christmas disc, Vidimus Gloriam Eos with Luciat, in Keble College on the 17th, I think. But sadly that was cancelled because of the wretched Rona. So I just spent it at home, and it was lovely. Because
in a particular, Christmas has been scuppered. And so many services have been taken off the books, but because of the virus. What if the church just invented Christmas 2.0? And is there a festival that they could just slot into the calendar to make up for lost time, and get people back in? I mean, what would that even? I know there's Easter. Don't say Easter because I know you're thinking it.
Well, I suppose they could make a bigger deal. Not that it's not currently made a big deal of, but you could maybe throw a bit more weight onto Epiphany.
Which is it's middle January, isn't it?
It's coming up, yeah. It's something like, is it the 16th?
And is oh gosh, what is Epiphany when? No, it's not when the kings arrive. My lore is rusty, Dan.
So this year it falls actually on the 6th of January. But I know because most choirs haven't sort of started up until that point. There's Epiphany carol services that are happening. Certainly. So if we look at Canterbury Cathedral, they did a service on the 9th, whereas Exeter Cathedral... Anyway, it's going to be later in January. I know certainly that the University of Exeter Chapel Choir are doing theirs on the 22nd of January. Right. And that will be quite jolly, and there's some, there's Epiphany music is fantastic. But I suppose you could sort of do that, but I think... Thankfully, lots of places, even with coronavirus, provided that the choir and members of clergy weren't sort of struck down with the plague, they managed to go ahead in one form or another. So it might have meant distancing in the building. It might have meant that the service was actually streamed rather than having a full sort of full attendance. The only place I know of off the top of my head that actually just had to sort of gut everything because there were so many, bodies down, if you like, was Bristol Cathedral.
Oh, blimey.
So there was no Christmas services there. I don't think they did any carol concerts. I don't think there was a Christmas Day or anything. It was just sort of cancelled because there were so many people, both clergy and choir, that were taken down, as I understand, which is a great shame. But
I still think that there's a still potential for Christmas 2.0. I just feel like they could, say, oh, we found... when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and it was like absolutely wild. They were like, "Yeah, that happened again. It turns out there's a new festival in May, and and we're going to go on a big television campaign. We're going to get people going on Graham Norton. I don't know which the best clergy person to go on Graham Norton would be. Archbishop of Canterbury,
possibly."
Like it's a new film that's come out, and they're just we just got to push the publicity for it.
Hey, you've made me think. And I know that I really ought to just sort of put a pin in this, and maybe I will, but when you mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls, that made me think of something that's dead and in the sea that has recently been discovered, which is quite cool and exciting, especially for someone with your sort of interests.
Oil?
No.
That's just my immediate thought.
It's quite big and begins with an I, and it's very old.
Incredibly old oil.
You got it in one.
Nailed it. It was an ichthyosaur, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I watched the news report last night. It was really
Yeah,
good.
which is so funnily enough, I actually I used to want to be a paleontologist. That was one of my like childhood dreams. But I actually have a friend who I went to school with who became a paleontologist and specifically became somebody who studies ichthyosaurs. So I actually wonder if Ben has had something to do with this. But yeah, so if people that don't know, it was basically like the prehistoric Paleolithic not Paleolithic, that's definitely wrong. Mesozoic version of a dolphin. Like that's sort of the niche it was in. But this thing is, when I saw the picture, it took my breath away because it's like the length of a double-decker bus.
Yeah, it's 33 feet or 10 meters long.
But in the shape of kind of like if you imagine a really old-timey dolphin, like it is to dolphins what oh god, what was the name of the Pokemon? Aerodactyl is to like a hawk. That's a terrible comparison, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that blew my mind is they were interviewing this chap, and he was so excited, not only because, I think I'm right in saying it's the most complete ichthyosaur fossil discovered. It's also the largest ichthyosaur fossil discovered, which in turn makes it the largest sea sort of creature complete that's ever been discovered.
Yes, because there have been larger mosasaurs and things like that. Although the one that everybody thinks of was from Walking with Dinosaurs, which was like Pleurodon, which we think was actually not as big as we thought it was. Like I think paleontologists were extrapolating based on a youngster. They were like, "Wow, this is a teenager. How much bigger do these things get?"
It's about the size of the moon. Hang on, maybe we need to reassess.
Turns out the continent of Asia is just a giant fossil. We're all just living on it. Yes. So yeah, that was very exciting actually. Good. God, we haven't actually talked about the article yet, Dan. Even by our standards, this is really meandering.
Red Hills Wind Farm.
Red Hills Wind Farm, which is a wind farm where they create wind, as is known,
in a place called Red Hills
in Oklahoma.
I thought it was going to be America.
It's very American sounding. It sounds either like an American name or a default name of a city that's been generated in like city skylines. Like that they capture the vibe of, especially like, is Oklahoma the Midwest? Is that the right region? I don't know American geography terribly well. But that bit of America, that swath of lots of open land.
There's a musical called Oklahoma. I know that much.
It's what Oh What a Beautiful Morning comes from, isn't it? Which is this is one of my favourite like little factoids about musical theatre, which was when Hugh Jackman went to audition for Oklahoma, he did that song, and he said everybody in the panel, like the audition panel, started singing along. And he said, I can't tell if this is the best audition of my life or the worst audition of my life.
Yeah.
Which I feel like if you were to go for Tenebrae or the 16 and they all just started singing along.
I had my audition for the University of Exeter Chapel Choir was, I sang a piece called Panis Angelicus by, is that Frank?
Oh, that sounds right, but I'm not sure. You're the expert here.
I think it is. I think it's Frank. Anyway, yeah, I sang that and then sang When Somebody Loved Me from Toy Story 2, and Michael started singing along and then sort of improvising a piano part underneath, and we just sort of sang that to each other, and then we're like, okay, yeah, that's done, let's have a chat. Which was again a similar sort of like, well, I hope that surely must have gone well then.
But it's a little bit intimidating, isn't it? As soon as anything doesn't really go to plan, like this isn't the way I thought this would go. But okay, yes. So anyway, it's in Oklahoma. It's near Elk City, which is a population 10,000 city. Sorry, 12,000 city. It's spread across 5,000 acres, and it has 82 wind turbines generating a total of 123 megawatts.
Right. So can you put that into a sort of? Can you place that within a context of power?
Yeah, I was really hoping you wouldn't ask me that.
Okay. Can you not place that in a context of power?
So it's less than the LHC uses, but more than an LED light uses.
Brilliant. Well, that narrows it down beautifully, doesn't it?
This is why I am a professional science communicator, Dan. So hang on, I'm just trying to find out. So 1 megawatt hour, because this is the thing. There's like the difference when you talk about power generation. Like engineers will sometimes talk about megawatts and megawatt hours. Megawatts is the actual output of a system, and megawatt hours is a quantity of energy that has been generated by a certain generation over the course of an hour. So like 1 megawatt hour is 1 megawatt generated for an hour.
I've read something here that says a typical coal plant uses about is about 600 megawatts in size.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a comparison for houses. So a house will typically consume about 2 megawatt hours. So actually, this thing is powering quite a few households. Interesting. Okay, that's more than I thought. So 123 megawatts. I can't be bothered to do the mental maths, but you're looking at the order of probably a few thousand households. That's probably wrong, but it's not going to be a million, and it's not going to be 10.
No,
it's probably going to be about in the thousands. So okay, interesting. I mean, it's perfect example of this is one of the wonderful things about renewables is they're great for low population density areas like Oklahoma, because if you're trying to power a city like Tokyo or Seoul or Mexico City, you are realistically going to have an incredibly intense lot of power generation because you're not going to have very much area to work with, and then you've got to transmit it to people. Whereas if you have in somewhere like Oklahoma or somewhere that's in the global south, like rural India, for example, having renewables means that you don't waste lots of power by having a huge coal power plant and then transmitting it to all of these villages over an enormous area and then having lots of transmission costs. It's just more efficient this way, and it's obviously better for the atmosphere, and it's more it's easier to maintain. It does that. It's interesting. It says that actually it's created 15 full-time local jobs, just running the farm, which I imagine is quite a pleasing job to have. You're just going around and checking in on these wind turbines, and I don't know why, that's quite a romantic image to me. You just sort of drive up over this 5,000 acre site. You got to go in and be like, old Bessie's gone down again. Like, oh, typical old Bessie. Right? It's probably that third, wing that we installed. Right, I'll go and check her out. Go on, get back in the pickup truck, and then drive out. You go up, you put in the new wing or whatever you do. I don't know. Is that just me? Or is that quite a romantic
I think what
image?
you do is you change one of the hamsters, don't you? Because they do get quite tired. So
yeah, you got to go in and top up the little water bottle.
Yeah,
like God, that'd be horrifying if instead of a wind farm, it's just these 20-foot across hamster wheels, and each hamster has like an acre of land. And when it wants to get some exercise, it just goes in the wheel and it's like. And you got to go in and grease the wheel, and but also you've got to go in, feed the hamster, yes, top up the water, assuming there's not enough water from rain. But you've also got to, if this is a hamster that's 8 foot long or whatever it is, you've got to make sure you're not going to get eaten by that thing. Yeah. They will, because they're omnivorous.
Absolutely.
I mean, capybaras are incredibly chill, but there's no guarantee that an 8-foot rodent, would be chill.
Wouldn't have a go.
I mean, look at the teeth.
Yeah.
The teeth on rodents are incredible. That's it's ferrets, isn't it? Where a relatively frequent injury that ferret owners have to deal with is that they'll be bitten and they can actually reach into the bone and like cut into the bone with their teeth. It's just horrifying.
I think my dad had ferrets because he grew up on a sort of like a farm in northern Yorkshire. So it was also basically like fast forward, I don't know, at least half a century, at least, but behind sort of current sort of times and things. And he used to go out like ratting or rabbiting with ferrets, where you'd keep it in a little box and you'd cover holes, and the rabbit they'd flush the rabbits out the warren and then eat them, and yeah.
I mean, I always associate ferrets with ferret racing.
Oh yeah.
Which is a very West Country thing. I remember it was the first term I'd spent at Oxford, and first term at any uni is quite disorienting anyway. But obviously, going to somewhere like Oxford, it's a hell of a culture shift. And I remember when we drove back home, going through the A roads and seeing a sign that said it was for a pub, and it was like, "We have ferret racing here," and I was like, I'm home.
Yeah.
This is great.
My people.
And just to confirm to people how that works, like basically you just have a bunch of tubes, and you put ferrets in each of the tubes, and it's a question of which one comes out the other end first. A long-standing noble tradition, along with piglet racing. In the West Coast. We know how to make our own fun. But that was actually the only other thing that I wanted to mention about this article, which was that in this wind farm, the generation is, the main thing, but also the land use is dominated by cattle grazing, because you've got 5,000 acres, and the footprint of each turbine is actually quite small, and the rest of it you may as well use for cattle. So great combined use. I mean, you could argue that it's not necessarily, it's somewhat mixed climate messaging, in that you're using this land to generate power in a very low carbon intensity way, and then also using it to generate the most carbon intensive form of food. So partial credit, but another one of these. It's just a totally different way of thinking about energy generation, renewables. It's so interesting. And actually, the bottom of this because Wikipedia articles, they have like a little section at the bottom where they will sort of say related reading, and sometimes there's sort of a whole category. So for this, there's a whole category of wind power in the United States, which I have to admit isn't something that I think of very much. It's not a nation that I think of as being largely powered. Well, certainly not largely, but significantly powered by wind. Whereas certainly the UK very much is. I think we get about 20-25% typically of our generation from wind, because we are fantastically generated, positioned for it. And obviously, because America is such a huge land, there will be places that will be perfect for it. But it's a topic, I don't know, maybe this is a topic I could make a video about.
That'd be interesting.
I've got to stop doing that. I've got to stop looking at topics and being, I can make content out of this.
How can I monetize this?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Right, well, with that's that, Daniel. And we have, it's so nice to do this again, and we've just been shooting this for 20-something minutes. This is great. But I would like to learn, especially seeing as you've had over a month to think about it, what is your choral piece of the week?
And this will be my piece of the week. Drum roll, please.
Well, my choral piece of the week, I mentioned earlier that there's some really great epiphany pieces. And I was chatting with a reader of this very podcast earlier today, and he mentioned a piece called Cana's Guest by, I think, is it Richard Alain?
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of this.
It's an amazing piece of music. So it's not particularly sort of long, but the entire piece is one sort of gradual sort of crescendo, really. And it's, whenever I hear it, I can't stop myself from sort of welling up, because it just gets richer and richer, and the texture gets sort of thicker and thicker. And there's this moment of sort of real jubilant. I'm trying to find the lyrics to it. It's very popular. Certainly, I know that the Exeter Cathedral are doing it, I think, quite soon, actually.
That's a completely new one to me.
It's amazing. It's really amazing, and I highly recommend you listen to it. It's not, it's not particularly long. Maybe 2.5 minutes, but it just builds and builds and gets louder and louder and bigger, and then suddenly sort of floats away. But it's beautiful.
Do we want to wade into the controversy that happened with the Carol World Cup this year?
Ooh. So on Twitter, there is a Twitter sort of page profile, if you like, that was previously titled the Evensong Cup, and it was a sort of World Cup of sorts, featuring particular music. I think it started with canticles and then did responses and things, so different sections of music from different parts of an Evensong service, and would sort of pit certain composers and pieces against each other, and then the Twitter community would vote, and we would see who had won the World Cup for that particular.
It was one of the nerdiest things.
It's neat. I mean, niche doesn't even sort of cut it, really. The World Cup of 21st Century Carols was what happened this year over Christmas, and it was featuring carols written by 21st century composers. There was some great stuff, really, really great stuff, and it ended up coming down to two composers. Philip Stopford, who's sort of prolific, certainly in sort of Christmassy music, but just generally, his music is very widely composed.
We've sung quite a bit actually at
We
Exeter.
have.
I mean, one of the classic canticles that we did was
A lot of stuff that's really good, really good.
one of the classic canticles that I was introduced to by Michael Graham was the Truro Canticles, which are quite unique. And I have to admit, I have a really, really quite a soft spot for the Nunc, even though it's very simple. It's a very, very nice piece of music.
Absolutely. He'd also written a very well known, highly performed carol, Luli Lula Lule, which actually featured in my programme with the Chagford Singers, because we had our Christmas concert, which was great fun.
Is it the Coventry Carol? Yeah, it has a historical name, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it's certainly that text, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Philip Stopford made it into the final against oh golly,
Oh, I actually can't remember who.
it was.
I hadn't heard of this carol.
No, nor had I. Yashani Perin Panayagam, I think.
Okay.
Perin Panayagam, I think is how it goes. In Bethlehem Above, which is beautiful. And I think someone like Stilla Antico or the Gesualdo Six or some sort of really high caliber small ensemble recorded quite a bit of her stuff. And it's beautiful. It's really, really nice. But it's safe to say that Stopford, for better or for worse, is more widely composed and well known.
But only just squeaked it in the final.
Yeah, only just sort of managed to sort of get his hands on the victory. And I think really it came down to just people seeing Stopford's name and thinking, oh yeah, I'll vote for Stopford, rather than actually properly listening to the music.
But that's so frequently how these votes go, right?
Of course.
It's frequently just a popularity contest.
Sure. And now whether you can say which piece is objectively better or not, that's a very hard question to ask, or rather answer, because it's down to personal taste, and obviously your sort of opinions of a particular poser or the style of music will heavily affect that. What wasn't so nice was the sort of slightly snarky comments that would be made when he had found that he'd won. So I think Yashani had put a post out saying something like, so great to be involved in this. Can't believe I made it to the final. Thanks for anyone who voted for me. Let's please do vote for me, and let's see if we can get a win. That would be great fun. And I think Stopford commented on that on her own thread, saying something like, "Ooh, so close," or something, but it's not in a joking sort of like banterous way, just in a sort of way of like gloating.
It's what the kids refer to as housery in the context of football, I believe. Which is choral housery.
It was just a real shame.
It was, because as you say, they've done this several times before, and the benefit of that is that none of the composers can start beef with each other because they're all dead, or pretty much all dead. So it's I suppose as soon as you drag living people into the mix, it just gets a bit messier, doesn't it? But what do you think they'll do next time? Because they've done, as you say, canticles, responses, carols. Have they done another one? Have they done mass settings?
I think they have done mass settings. Yeah, they have.
There's more nerdery. I mean, to be fair, you could probably just do the World Cup of Bach cantatas, and you'd get people fighting tooth and nail over it.
I don't know what they'd do next. Maybe.
I honestly think the smart play would be to make it something specific to a composer, like, and even if you did it as a smaller World Cup, you could have like, Mozart sonatas or operas. Actually, just operas you could probably do. Yeah,
I think that would be very divisive as well, wouldn't it? It'd be people. Yeah.
Because people who sing on stage, whether that's musical theatre or operatic singers, famously, very even-tempered. They don't hold grudges. They're not petty in the slightest. They're, very even-keeled. So I'm sure it would be fine. Just we're singing stalls. Actually, we're not like you. We are not the same. So we find ourselves in Critics' Corner, and I have a couple of things that I'd want to talk about. Do you have anything that's really stuck out over the past couple of weeks? Because it has been quite a while, let's face it.
I do.
That you've enjoyed.
Not so much in the last couple of weeks, but certainly in about the past 4 days.
Oh boy.
And it all, as is so often the case, Hugo Wickham is to blame.
How many stories have started with this? Yes, go on.
So I mentioned earlier that I'd mostly spent Christmas at home with my family. They live in Oxfordshire. But I went into London for New Year to go to Hugo's for a little sort of jolly New Year's party. We had a really lovely day. Went into London fairly early in the morning. Went to the most amazing, beautiful restaurant in Covent Garden for a really special lunch. And then later went over to Hugo's for this do and had a riotous night. It was great fun. I was also given a tour around Westminster Cathedral on New Year's Eve sort of afternoon, which was amazing, having never been in the building before. It's an utterly fabulous building, so very appreciative for that. But yeah, I had a great night, and then the following day, when most of us were all feeling pretty hungover, I wandered into the sort of living room, and Hugo was sort of welded to the sofa, drinking orange juice out of the carton and just looking a bit sorry for himself. But he had something on the television, and I thought, I recognise this, but I haven't sort of watched it, and I was a bit sort of dubious because I don't know. There's something. So like I really struggle to watch It's Always Sunny. It just doesn't really do it for me. It's not my sort of humour, I guess. So I sort of like, well, I'll give it a chance and watch. And anyway, he was watching House with Hugh Laurie.
You mentioned this, yes.
House MD, and I watched maybe, I don't know, the best part of one episode, and actually thought, oh, that's pretty good. And it would have been a random episode in something in like season 5 or something. So I didn't really know the characters. I hadn't really developed any sort of relationship or sort of connection with them. Anyway, came back to Exeter and started watching House, and I very proudly can say I've now finished the entire first season of House, which is quite the feat because there's 22 episodes and each episode's 45 minutes long.
The last time we spoke, Dan, you said how you'd been binging Friends. Like, how? It's astonishing you do this with long form series. Have you ever just seen like a short form, like 3-episode miniseries, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that for a change? Like,
yeah, I suppose sometimes. I mean, I think the thing that's so sort of ridiculous with me is that I come to things so late, so comically late, you know. But House, great. I'm really, really liking it. I don't know how the rest of the seasons will sort of go on, but Hugh Laurie's very sort of endearing, and his sort of acerbic nature is quite fun to watch. I used to watch when I was in Australia, and the family I was living with in the last sort of year or so, we used to watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy. So I think it's sort of tapping into that sort of medical drama satisfaction thing. Yeah. But then is also, you know, while there are serious moments, there are moments where it doesn't take itself too seriously, because Gregory House, MD, is just a complete sort of, you know, sarcastic, dry, I said, acerbic character, and it's really good. So yeah, House would be the sort of top of my list. Otherwise, I haven't really watched anything except for the new Green Planet.
We spoke about
David Attenborough thing on BBC. I watched that last night, which was great.
No, I haven't seen that yet. Right, well, really I know what I'm doing tonight.
Really good. I'm looking forward to the next episode.
We spoke about House at the pub, and
we did.
I'll just repeat what I said there, because I basically I used to really like House, and when I now when would it have been? I think it might have been when I went to Exeter. I think Michael might have mentioned this to me. I tried watching Suits, because House and Suits, as far as I can tell, very similar shows. It's just that one is medicine based and one is legally based, right? Like, instead of doctors, you have lawyers. There's a case every week, and it's just a medical case or a legal case, whatever. But I think the difference is that, like, with House, at least I'm aware roughly of what each an internal organ does, you know? Like, I know that where arms are supposed to attach. I have an understanding of medicine. And so when what is basically a Deus Ex Machina is pulled out of the bag by House, at least I vaguely know, it makes logical sense, right? Like I can follow the argument. Whereas with Suits, which I wanted to like, I don't have that level of understanding of the lore, and I don't know if this is have you watched Suits, and do you find that actually you can watch it in a way similar to House, where you roughly do know what's going on, or is it that American law is so different to British law that you're also kind of clueless?
I mean, it is very different. I've seen, I think, bits of Suits, but I think what I struggle with more is the sort of form and style of the program, as opposed to whether I can engage with the lore or not.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Maybe I'll give it a go. Maybe I'll like it.
I'd be interested to know what you think, because that was the thing that killed my enjoyment of the show, was just that, and also I suppose by unfavourable comparison to House, which I have not watched all of it, but I probably watched about half of all the episodes. Like I watched it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then I also tried watching Fringe with Denethor in it, which again, similar kind of show, but it's like kind of the edges of technology, but not. And I watched a couple of episodes and hated it because it was just so pseudoscience. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should go back and watch that. To be fair, I've been doing my own binging. I've been watching Star Trek. I'm midway through watching Deep Space Nine now. I'm literally about halfway through the whole run of the show, and that's 3 and a bit seasons now.
Right.
And each season has 26 episodes.
Gosh.
And they're 45 minutes each, and it's a lot. I feel deeply nerdy watching it. But the 2 things that I wanted to mention were, firstly, another nerdy thing that is becoming increasingly not nerdy is The Witcher.
Oh yes, yeah, I've seen all of season 2.
Now, I really did quite like season 1. I don't think it was perfect, but it was really quite good. And I felt like season 2 just wasn't quite there. Like, it just, the writing for me just wasn't, it didn't quite hang together as well. Like,
yeah.
I liked how in season 1 it was basically like each episode was almost like a mission in a Witcher game. Like,
yes.
there was a monster you introduced to, you solved the scenario, but there's also the big overarching plot. But in this one, I felt like there was that really strong episode at the start with the vampire lady living in the walls.
Oh yeah, that was great.
And really effective. I mean, that's the thing. In this season, the creature designs have been phenomenal.
As a
like,
sort of
every single one.
Visual feast. It's amazing.
It really was.
They've done such a good job.
Not least Henry Cavill being the size and shape of a brick house. Like,
yeah, he's incredible, isn't he?
He's so big. And so nerdy. Obviously, big fan because of the Warhammer thing. Yeah, I just felt like that episode gave me a lot of hope, and then the rest of the season I just felt like the overarching story really wasn't very strong, and equally the individual episodes weren't very strong. I felt like they tried to go more in on that longer form story, and it just missed a bit. But really enjoyable. Like, Pixel Girl really got into it. She absolutely loves watching The Witcher, like, because it's kind of Game of Thrones but more fantasy and better.
Yeah,
basically, certainly than the later seasons. I think Game of Thrones at its peak is pretty untouchable, really.
Yeah,
when it was pretty closely based on the books.
I think season 2 for me, the thing that I found quite sort of jarring was there was a lot of jumping around.
Yeah, and there were the timelines being different timelines.
Yeah, so there was sort of a slight unpredictability from a chronological perspective, but then also just different stories that are meant to be happening at the same time, not really knowing like where we're going to next, and hang on, we're now here. Is this in the part? Wait, that was the thing that I found most sort of hard to get my head around. But the performances were good. That's
they referenced it though, didn't they? They referenced the whole timelines thing in this season with when that dock worker has a go at Jaskier for his writing. And he's like, I thought it would be better. I didn't realise there were 2 timelines.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was quite clever. But I also, like, Pixel Girl and I have also realised that Jaskier is just Ed Dunn. our dear friend Ed. Whenever he's on screen, it's like, oh, it's Ed. In the same way as like when we watched Umbrella Academy and he's just Klaus. He's apparently all of our favourite TV characters.
He will be celebrating a birthday very soon, will he not?
Very soon. I think, well, by the time this episode comes out, it will have happened.
Yeah.
But happy birthday, Ed, if you're listening to this. Hopefully listening to it in a quiet moment after you've had a long day working in your own business, which is amazing. Happy birthday, friend.
Apps, baps.
The other thing that I just briefly wanted to mention was a surprise discovery for me that I kind of fell into from the Jingle Jam. So a game that I would have passed over had it not been for Lewis's recommendation, called Murder by Numbers. And what this is a... God, this is going to sound so stupid. It's a anime-inspired police detective game where, in order to advance the plot, you have to solve these puzzles called Pico Cross. And it's quite difficult to describe, but it's basically you have like a grid, and the objective is you're trying to uncover an image, because the grid is filled with like solid squares and blank squares, and those solid squares will make a shape. And where the solid squares are is determined by some numbers that are written at the top of each row, the top of each column and on the side of each row. And that will basically tell you how many full filled-in squares there are in that row or in that column. And you can basically deduce by a certain one. So, for example, if there's a column that is 10 squares tall, and you know that there are 8 squares that are going to be filled in a row, that it's either going to start from the top, and so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or it's going to start from the bottom, in which case it's going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But there are common numbers between those two options, so you know that there's going to be filled in squares in the middle. And when you fill that in, then suddenly it actually starts filling in pieces of information about other rows, because you might know that, oh, okay, well, that means that there has to be, that is the start of a distribution on this row. And you do that over and over again, and eventually you make a picture. And it's one of these games that on paper I would not at all be interested in, but it's really compelling. And even though I told myself I just want to do the puzzles, the story did actually kind of draw me in, and I'm really looking forward to getting on to the next case.
I think I saw a clip of this, and I think it was
they did do
a video. Lewis getting really annoyed at Boba for not being able to sort of figure it out.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yes, so it was in the Jingle Jam. I'm not sure how much it is on its own, but I really, really enjoyed it.
I was talking to somebody the other night about they're very keen on Sudoku, and that's something that I can sort of do, and it takes a while because I'm not great with numbers. Just like visually, numbers sort of freak me out a bit. But I was thinking I wanted to sort of try my hand at a Sudoku that rather than using numbers, uses colours.
Okay.
And the only thing that I found, I was looking at this the other night, I found a Reddit page that somebody has created, basically it's like a wooden board that uses pieces that basically look like M&Ms or Smarties, but use colours instead of those numbers, and then it just it's the sort of similar rules apply really to Sudoku. And I was wanting to sort of actually try and give it a go, because I wonder whether the sort of, depending on the sort of type of brain that you have, being able to clearly see differences in colour for what's in front of you, as opposed to black and white numbers, whether it would sort of be easier or harder. And I was reading through the comments on Reddit, and lots of people are saying, this looks infinitely more confusing to me. I much prefer numbers. But then other people saying someone said here, as someone with a learning disorder centered around maths and numbers, this would be so much easier for me. And it was just a sort of interesting thing.
Well, because you can be, what is it? There's the numerical equivalent
of dyslexia.
Yeah, which is, what's it called? Dyscalculia, that's it.
Perplexia?
It's called being normal, I think. Dyscalculia. but yeah, like, because it also taps into this idea of like different learning styles, which is something that I actually believed for quite a while, but it turns out it has no supporting data whatsoever. It's just one of these myths that sort of buried itself in popular education and then just persisted. Whereas if you ask Pixel Girl or someone who studies educational literature, no bearing whatsoever. But I think numbers is a particular case, to be fair, and I could totally believe that someone such as yourself or somebody who is less, especially someone who's spent less time doing maths, frankly, would probably find it easier with spatial information like that. That's interesting. I mean, I have to admit, I'm terrible at Sudokus. I'm really bad at them. So maybe I should give this a go.
Yeah, it takes me ages to try and figure it out. This person likes doing killer Sudokus.
What? So there's like Ted Bundy in one square, which means it can't be in a different square.
They're sort of each square is grouped into a certain shape, and then there'll be a in that sort of group that might look like a sort of Tetris block. There'll be a number, so like all of the numbers there, rather than just being able to put numbers anywhere to make it work. You've got to put certain numbers in certain places to make a certain number.
Do you ever look at, like, and I don't do this frequently, I'll be honest, like when you see someone reading the newspaper and they have like the puzzle square page open, and you've got your normal ones, you've got your crosswords, you've got your Sudokus, and then you look at the other ones and you're like, who the asked for these?
Yeah.
Like, who thought this was a good idea?
I really want to try and properly get into cryptic crosswords.
Because that is a skill in itself. I can do normal crosswords fine, but cryptic, no, terrible.
Well, cryptics have a totally different approach, and there is an actual sort of way of doing them. There's a way of sort of looking at the question and reading the question and breaking the question down and knowing that, okay, when they say this, they mean this. When they say this sort of a phrase, this is what it's getting at. That might be a challenge for this year. Try and get into cryptic crosswords.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's an honourable thing. I mean, I've got do you actually? That's a point. This is probably the place to talk about it. Actually, is that sort of a New Year's resolution for you? Do you have any others?
I mean, the biggest resolution is to sort of try and get all of this law stuff done.
Yeah.
Because my LPC and Masters starts this week, actually, which is really exciting, but slightly stressful because while this new course has started, I still haven't technically completely finished my GDL. I still have my final exams to sit. So providing all of that goes well and all of my other assessments in the past year have gone well, then hopefully I'll get an email saying, yeah, you've been awarded your GDL. Your graduation will be at some point, and then I can just tell the University of Law, oh yeah, no, I've got it, and they'll keep me on the course for the LPC and Masters. If something doesn't go well, which would be quite the shock because nothing has gone wrong so far, then I'd have to resit something, but I wouldn't be able to stay on this course. So I'd have to join another cohort, which means I'd probably have to join in September this year, which wouldn't be ideal, but we'll have to sort of see, really.
So your resolutions are get qualified in law and learn to do cryptic crosswords.
Yeah, which I think is a sort of quite a nice combo.
Yeah, but basically equal accomplishment, if I'm honest. I mean, I was just I want to try and learn 6 pieces on the piano. I'm trying to make a habit of playing the piano every day because I've never had lessons, and it's always been a skill that I've wanted to have. I want to be able to, eventually, be able to do things like accompany people, but also things like, just sit and entertain myself at a piano by improvising. Like my first instruments were more jazzy, it was saxophone and cornet, I guess. So I love improvising, but I've never been able to do it. I've never had the knowledge to be able to do it on the piano. So you do cryptic crosswords and I'll do that.
Perfect.
Top lad.
And as you all know by now, it's that time again where we move on to Patreon Corner to say an enormous thank you to those who support us on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/the Wikicast. Simon, why is Patreon so important?
Patreon's so important because it means that we can do the show. It pays for Fergus, our current editor, and it, is eventually going to pay for us actually being able to make some content together, which, now that I'm well, and eventually this pandemic is going to off, we'll hopefully be able to do. And we've got plenty of ideas queued up. We just need to actually find the time and the lack of pandemic to do it, which, it's all going to be your fault. When you see that content and you're supporting us on Patreon, you will know that it's entirely your fault.
Absolutely.
On the Patreon, you can support us as a top cat or a top dog, basically declaring your undying allegiance to the superior household pet. I will admit that I actually took a Dachshund for a walk the other day. My friends have just got themselves a new a Dachshund puppy, and it was adorable.
Lovely.
But still team cat. And with that in mind, I'd like to thank the top cat patrons who support at $5 a month at patreon.com/the Wikicast. Those people being Will Jenice Humphreys, Choco Cat, Rents Kirk, Simon P, Oliver Burkhart, Nathan Flaherty, Layla Medina, Matt Maguire, Lewis Watson, Princess Andromeda, Jack Easton, Isabel Ostrowski, Izzy CC, Nafi Iftikhar, Dame Valerie III, Easy, Dan Hanvey, Oliver Craigie, Cole Mansfield, Bendant, Andy Hartley, and Abu El Ella, the physics boy.
And I would like to say an enormous thank you to the top dog supporters: Aaron Jorgensen, Alistair Fortune, Amy Bonney, Adrian with an N, Chan, Ben Capers,
Andrian.
And I keep doing that. You
did it last time.
Yeah, I know. I can't read.
Because you said Adrian with an N. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. You've got a mustache. I know.
I know.
Andrian with an N, Chan, Ben Caples, Ben McMurtry, Brain Dev Null, Colin J. Brown, Eric Bolliger, Eve Sharples, Hasse Hansen, Henry VII, King of England and of France, Lord of Ireland, Jay Wright, Josh Chiaga, Kodzo, Lexi at Front Desk, Maggie, Martin Narciso, Michael Gustafsson,
sure?
Naflarok, Peter Reed, and Sam Harvey, the Everlasting Student. Thank you so much for your support.
Top lad! We find ourselves now in Correspondence Corner, and we have a couple of emails here, one of which from the day that we actually recorded the last Wikicast, but after, in the evening of that day. So apologies to Matt for missing this message for so long, but we have it and we're going to read it now. Matt says, I spent 834 minutes listening to the Wikicast in 2021.
Incredible.
Hang on, that's 10...
One eternity later.
Is that what, 14 hours? Something like that?
I guess, yeah.
You people are nuts.
Fire. 14 hours.
Right.
Well done.
Matt says, Dear Simon and Daniel, with this Omicronic year coming to a close, that actually feels right. Spotify's Wrapped are a thing again, and mine featured you prominently. Turns out I spend a lot of time driving, washing the dishes, and walking in the park, because 834 minutes of 2021, almost 14 hours. Hey, I'm pretty impressed with myself. Was spent listening to you two babble about bullshit. As of my writing this sentence, that is 0.17 lots of numbers % of my year.
Golly.
What a waste.
What a time.
No doubt I am not the only reader to have you feature so proudly in my Wrapped, but to be honest, I've been waiting for a reason to write in, and this seemed perfect. It's niche, interesting to few, boring to most, and way too specific. Sound familiar?
He's on to us. Simon, he's on to us.
Run! Perhaps you noticed by now that I quite like numbers and stats. In fact, that's what I studied. Statistics along with French and economics as my other undergrad majors. That's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
I'm still convinced I'm the only person to ever have that combination of majors at my university. The University of Cape Town, that is.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I graduated last year, congrats, and I'm now working at a tech startup as their data scientist in the city. I have a lot of freedom working for such a young company and with not a single employee over 30.
Wow.
I'd be too old to work at this company. Wow. I'm really lucky to be enjoying my first job so much. Well done. Aside from work, I've just moved into a new flat with my boyfriend. Any other gay readers out there? I can tell you, absolutely yes.
100%.
Very much not alone. I love how diverse this community of listeners is. So yes, definitely not our only gay reader. Don't worry. And his colleague. It's been a bit of an adjustment, starting a 9 to 5 and becoming fully independent. But overall, it's been a good one, and I'm excited for the year ahead. I don't really have anything else to add or ask except to say thank you for making this podcast. I tell my boyfriend that listening to it often just feels like chatting over some beers with friends, and now I've finally been able to contribute my bit of nonsense to the conversation. Keep on babbling bullshit, Matt.
We surely will, Matt. We surely will.
I like that. Yeah, I've finally been able to contribute my bit of non-tent. Everybody who writes in that, you're weaving a thread into the tapestry. That's what you're doing. Thank you very much, man. What a lovely email.
We have an email here from a long-term reader, titled Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. It begins, "Sup, lads. Long-term reader and proud Team Dog supporter. I was watching a live stream by Cracking the Cryptic. It's two blokes who solve Sudoku puzzles, if you haven't heard of them. And they played the game Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes." I mean, this is one of those weird infinite universe things, isn't it?
Yeah.
For anyone who hasn't heard of the game, it's basically a multiplayer game where one person tries to defuse a bomb by completing a series of puzzles guided only by the instructions of the expert, who can read the manual but cannot see the game. I've seen this and it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Together, the players must work together to identify the modules on the bomb and the correct solution to defuse it all without running out of time or using up their strikes. Communication is key.
Screwed.
While watching the stream, it occurred to me that this would make brilliant content for the Spongy and Electric YouTube channel, either in live stream or pre-recorded form. Live stream would probably be better as long as the expert doesn't cheat. Also, if you were to get drunk and play it, well, I approve of that too. Best wishes for Christmas and the New Year, Jay. That's an excellent idea.
I totally agree. That is an easy game that we should be putting on.
We
Spongy
could
and
coincide this with. I still have all of those miniatures, those bottles of drinking around the world.
Saying this earlier, there are so many ideas that we've wanted to do, and it's just been every time we've put a date in the calendar, something's come up, and it's normally been the pandemic.
The other thing that we need to look at now we're in the new year is to find a really obscure festival. Can you remember?
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. We need to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this. I don't know what the best way to do this, because I think I like the idea of getting both of us on camera doing this, and it may well be. I definitely think we could do this as a live stream thing.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fantastic suggestion, Jay. Thank you. That is really, really cool.
Yeah.
We're going to do that for sure. And then just to close off this section, we have an email, very brief email from Felix saying, "Dear Simon and Dan, I just wanted to email in and say thank you for the podcast, the songs you're singing. Thanks for all the joy No, it doesn't actually say that. By the way, did you know that in Star Wars, the music the Cantina band plays is called Jizz?"
Oh yes, I did know this.
I did know this, but I think there was another fact to do with this. It's like that was it. Do you know the name of the musicians that specialize in the genre?
No, I don't.
They're called Jizz Wailers.
Jizz Wailers, as in whale.
No, as in like I cry out whale.
Yeah. Jizz Wailers, fantastic.
I'm a jizz whaler.
Fantastic. I mean, oh, for God's sake.
Why? Why does this need to be a thing? Max Rebo and his band were popular jizz whalers. I assume that's the one from Mos Eisley.
It must be.
No, oh no. Max Rebo is the blue aardvark-looking guy in Jabba's palace. And a popular jizz whaler who led the Max Rebo band. He was the one who led the band.
Oh yeah, the group are classified as jizz whalers, which, according to the Star Wars Encyclopedia, refers to a musician who plays a fast, contemporary, and upbeat style of music. Max and Droopy were portrayed by actors in bodysuits. I mean, this is like the Emperor Palpatine hospital.
Surgical reconstruction center. It's 2 in a row, but my word, it's one of my favourite things.
It's so good.
But if you go on the Star Wars fandom wiki, it says that Jizz first appeared in Return of the Jedi. So I think that means that the what's it called? The music in the Mos Eisley Cantina isn't Jizz, which is what I thought it was. But what's interesting is it says it was first identified as Jizz.
God's sake.
With a blacklight. No, in the Star Wars Return of the Jedi Junior novelization.
Right.
It was released in 2017.
So they put jizz into the junior novelization to make them laugh. It's basically what we've established there.
I don't know if it would have been. That's such a bizarre choice.
I mean, at this point, are we really surprised? No.
No is the honest answer to that question. Why does this need to be a thing? Oh my god, I didn't notice the list. The list of instruments, Dan, used in jizz music.
Okay.
Because you could play the bass viol, or you could play the clack beep box, or the fanfare, or the jizz box.
Oh my goodness. The jizz
or the
box.
peel rod, or the slitherhorn, or the plung sounder.
This is like... You've got your own regular plumbus. First,
Yes!
the grumbo
Yes.
is... And then shaved away.
Oh my god.
For goodness sake.
I play the jizz box. What is the jizz box? I want to know.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
Oh, because... Oh my god, it gets better. Dan, it gets better. Oh my god, I'm gonna read you. Right, I'm gonna read a quote here from the Wikipedia entry. This is verbatim. Okay. The jizzbox was a musical device. In 13 ABY, the protocol droid C-3PO, who was stranded on the planet of Nimdrovis, auditioned to perform at a cantina called the Wookiees Codpiece.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
C-3PO performed by playing back songs stored in his memory core with his vocabulator. The assistant manager of the establishment told the droid that he sounded like a festering jizz box and rejected him, saying that the codpiece already had a jizz box to play.
That's so silly, isn't it? Isn't it?
Oh my god, I love it.
Did they just get drunk and start writing some of this stuff?
The assistant manager said he sounded like a festering jizz box and rejected him, saying we've already got a jizz box to play.
I mean, honestly, there are no words. There are no words.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
And on that bombshell,
On that bombshell,
Simon, what have we learnt today?
We've learned things no human should learn, Dan.
Yeah.
We've learned about the Red Hills Wind Farm, a 5,000-acre wind farm in Oklahoma, which we talked about super briefly because
For all of 10 seconds before we started on to ichthyosaurs and...
Christmas, sickness, health, better, worse.
We had a choral piece of the week in the form of Cana's Guest by Richard Alain.
We talked about The Witcher. We talked about House. We talked about... God, we packed in a lot this episode, actually. My goodness.
Just so much. And then we ruined it all.
By saying jizzbox.
Jizzbox, exactly.
And then I go and ruin it all by saying something stupid like...
Jizzbox.
Oh my days.
And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to... Oh my gosh. Hang on, let's do that again. And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice, join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel Spongy and Electric.
Your favourite jizz instruments, game recommendations, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble into the wiki jizz box.
Oh, why?
I like the idea
that's
of
horrid.
the fact that tumble is in that sentence is even worse.
Oh no!
Oh.
You slip on it. Oh no! Oh no!